Hello. Today we're gonna be doing the 5 strategies for Think Out Loud, and I'm going to explain to you um, some steps for this. So before we begin, I'm gonna model what we're gonna do, and then we will continue, and then you do the next, right? So this lesson is gonna be on life science, and before we begin, is there any before we begin, are you a fluent reader?
Yes.
When you read, do you always understand what you're reading and the stories?
Yes. For the most part.
And is there any type of readings that you like in particular? Fiction, biographies?
Fiction. Most of the time it's always fiction and anything that involves adventure.
Okay, so for these 5 strategies, what we're gonna be doing, I'm gonna read to you. I'm gonna read a small portion of the article, and then you continue reading. And from this article, before we begin, we're gonna predict, we're gonna visualize, express, and do all these things. So I will be guiding you as we go. So for today's text, here you have a page with the 5 strategies. So I'm gonna demonstrate what's gonna happen is that I'm gonna read this. So as we read the title, we notice that we see, okay, so it's called Human Microbiome, the Role of Microbes in Human Health. So reading on this title, we want to think, like, oh, what is that I can predict? What comes into my head when I think about this title? What do you think it's gonna talk about as we go further in this article passage, this reading passage that is in science article? And we predict, right? So I say, okay, human microbes. I think of germs. I think of things that are microscopic, right? And then I try to see what I could imagine as I read the text. So if I read the beginning, it says, you are an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community of living things that interact with each other and with non-living things in the physical environment. So when I see this and I hear the word physical environment and interaction, ecosystem, community, all these words, I visualize like a whole natural habitat with trees and water running through. So when I hear ecosystem and physical environment, I think of all these things. So then I would, for example, in this paper, I would draw, right, what I imagine myself as I'm reading the passage, something that comes into mind. Next is express any confusion. Sometimes there's many words we can't really understand. Maybe we know what microbes are, but we don't know the exact definition. But automatically, as I see micro, I can tell that it's microscopic, right? It's small. And there's different strategies to trying to understand a word. You know, for example, it's always good strategy to write down and something that you didn't understand fully or you have a question of. So based on this paper, this diagram that we have here and these 5 skills, we will write it down and document this here. And then we go to the next one when we go into fix up strategy, which is reread or read an article, sound out the word, something that we don't understand, or we want to be able to, sometimes we use a root of the suffix of the word, a piece of the word, and we try to understand, like going back to the word microbe. I think of microbe, which is something that is tiny, small, you can only see through a microscope, right? Microbe, that's the root word coming out of that. The last strategy that we'll be using as we continue reading through this passage, which I'm going to ask you to read out loud, is, what does this remind you of? An analogy of what we've read has remind me of as I go, what it might think, looking back into the text. Okay. So we're gonna begin. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're gonna do, and if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask me. I'm here to assist you. I want you to read the title and then tell me what you predict what you can predict what's gonna talk about more or less based on this title. Write it down. Tell me about it. And ready? We begin.
Right. So the title reads Human Microbiome, the role of microbes in human health.
So when you hear this title before we begin through this passage, what comes into your mind?
What's gonna state, the article's gonna state that there is a function for the microbes in our bodies. I'm guessing each type of microbe or the gathering of microbes form what I mean. Just from what I can see, the human microbiome would be like the microbes as a whole inside of us. So each as a whole, they they play a larger role than what we might think.
We're gonna start reading the article.
So it reads, you are an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community of living things that interact with each other and with the non-living things in their physical environment. Forests, lakes, and caves are ecosystems. Each contains a unique mix of living components, like plants and animals, and non-living ones, like air, sunlight, rocks, and water. The human body is also an ecosystem. We are home to thousands of kinds of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and other microscopic organisms, which number in the trillions. These organisms are called microbes. Together they form communities that make up the human microbiome. These like fingerprints, no two human microbiomes are the same. That makes each person not just an ecosystem, but a unique ecosystem.
So after reading this paragraph, we notice that we have a keyword and there's a vocabulary word for us there. What vocabulary word is that? Human microbiome.
From what I've read and gathered, human microbiome, like I stated before, would be a community, which is where it read that we have thousands of bacteria, viruses, fungi, and microscopic organisms, which all together form a unique ecosystem inside of us.
Can you draw to me what you think when what you can visualize? What comes out in your head after reading this?
Sure. So I picture a lot of small microscopic beings all over our bodies that we can't see, but they're still there. They cover from our head to our toes.
So we go to the next strategy when we're thinking out loud. I'm saying what we think on this. Something you don't understand. You might want to understand. It may cause a little bit of confusion. If not, we can continue reading to the next paragraph.
Yeah, let's continue reading to this. Microbes first appeared over 3.5 billion years ago, making them the oldest form of life on Earth. Over the past 6 million years, humans and microbes have co-evolved to form complex relationships. Humans need a microbiome to stay healthy, and the microbiome needs environments provided by the human body in order to survive. Just like larger organisms, the species that make up microbiome interact with each other and rely on these interactions to thrive. Different species live in different places in and on our bodies and are adapted to these environmental conditions. Scientists are studying how these microorganisms work in our bodies. They're learning about the balance among different bacterial communities. Products like antibacterial hand sanitizers can wipe out all bacteria on our path of skin, good and bad alike. Antibiotic drugs also destroy helpful bacteria along with their targets. Fungi evolved the ability to produce antibacterial chemicals as they competed with bacteria over millions of years of evolution. By studying these fungi, scientists learned how to manufacture these antibacterial chemicals and turn them into antibiotic drugs, which have saved millions of lives. At the same time, studies suggest that rapidly increasing antibiotic use in the United States has reduced the diversity of our microbiomes. Supporting players. Do the bacteria in your body act as friend or foe, as pathogen or protector? It depends. Thousands of species of bacteria inhabit our bodies, and researchers are only beginning to understand the complex interrelationships among them. And between microbial cells and human ones, we know that some are pathogens and cause disease. Scientists are increasingly finding that the majority of bacteria are not harmful. Rather, many benefit us in a variety of ways, from aiding digestion to protecting our teeth. Scientists are just beginning to understand what roles these organisms play in human health. It's a complicated dynamic, and the effects on human health depend on the population size of the microorganisms and on conditions in their ecosystem. The human body. The key? Balance. Here are some of the species that play an important part in maintaining a healthy equilibrium. Bacteria that you might say have your back.
So, what do you think after reading this following part of the passage? Anything that you want to understand? Any confusion? Any word that maybe makes you think what it could be? What do you think when you read this?
That there are good, positive, and negative effects from us using these type of sanitizers, and because since these microbes make up us unique, we're destroying part of it. And so I believe that when we destroy these, from what I gathered was that these can be helpful for us to control diseases and other stuff like that. Um, and in the passage it says that it has benefits, and it can aid us in digestion and the protection of our teeth. So a lot of these key diseases and things that these micro that we have, they pretty much seem helpful to us.
Does this passage has made you think or remind you of anything? Something that can remind you of an analogy based on what we read? It could be anything that might reminded you, maybe something to real life, or something that we're living, or as you read this passage, what comes into your mind?
So after reading all this, I think it really puts into perspective the way that we have evolved. Sort of like now with the coronavirus, believe that a lot of our bodies are being, since we've come up with a lot of these stuff of antibacterials, and we're not all these types of medicines, we're not letting our bodies do our job of protecting us. So maybe we've lowered our defenses, and maybe that's why a lot of people have died from this, since our bodies are becoming more weak.
Okay, thank you so much for your help. And this was 5 strategies for Think Out Loud on life science.
No, thank you.